So yesterday, while concluding our session, we talked about the bureaucratic model of personnel administration, and we saw bureaucracy as one of the models. Also, we will have to remember that this very bureaucracy is a model that is in its multiple avatars, multiple flavors, multiple variations, is prevalent across the globe, right? So no denying of the fact that this might not be the most optimum model, but this is one of the most prominent models to organize the personnel, especially when it comes to public administration, right? Apart from that, if you will look at, yes, there are issues with the bureaucratic model, but those issues can be handled, right, with more innovative practices. So, measures to enhance or better the bureaucratic model. So while bureaucracy is linked with the rigidity, the unresponsiveness, it is also the need of any government or any modern government or large organization. And the inevitability of the bureaucracy is evident from the fact with the increasing number of functions and the complexity that the governments and the organizations have to now deal with. Just to sample this, even in private organizations, you see, with the coming up of new laws, let us say new Companies Act, CSR norms, environment emission criteria, okay, increasing role of media. So suddenly, earlier there used to be a spokesperson, right? But now you have whole PR, public relations departments. Even in government organizations, you will find now increasingly there are public representatives. Okay, not public representatives, the media representatives, okay, and public relations department. So, the idea is that you look within. When you define merit, what is that merit? Okay, the hierarchy, division of work, etc. cannot be done away with. Also, the bureaucracy as one of the rational entities and the rational distribution of work can actually perform with great efficiency if things are taken in right spirit. So if you look at the bureaucracy itself, it's a good servant, but a very ruthless master. It's a bad master. So the moment you see that there is a fractured political class, the moment you see that the political class lacks merit, that actually cedes the space of control and balance, which gets occupied by the overzealot bureaucrats. Okay? The policy guidelines has to flow from the top, from the politics. And it should be clearly able to prevail over the bureaucracy. But understand, in a democratic system, there has to be this fine balance, so that the politics should not actually transmit the irrationality or the strife, as Wilson called it. So the bureaucracy, going back to Wilson, the politics is necessary for control, for accountability of the bureaucracy. Okay? So that is there. Also, the popular control vis-a-vis the parliaments, legislatures, subcommittees, right? And the necessary safeguards should be provided to prevent the misuse of delegated authority, frequent reviews. So for example, we have seen how in US there is a congressional hearing. You see, they carry out those congressional hearings where the bureaucrats, the department officials are called and they are to depose, give testimony, and that is, that procedure is on the lines of, like a court deposition. You would have seen the movie Oppenheimer, right, where Robert Oppenheimer has to appear before one such committee. So these things are there. Now, please understand, be innovative. Innovative in the sense that you would have seen that the parliamentary proceedings getting streamed on televisions, on internet nowadays, right, through the Sansad TV, or earlier it used to be the Lok Sabha TV or Rajya Sabha TV. Why can't we actually see the meetings of committees? Right, so this is a suggestion. Obviously, there would be certain committees related to defense, etc., which should actually remain under the wraps. So while the MOM of these meetings are released on Lok Sabha website and at other places, but why not televise it or live stream it? How difficult is it nowadays? Okay, you do not need an OB van or something. You need a camera, just like how we are connected through a camera and an internet connection and a software. This can very easily happen. Okay. Apart from that, the internal, within the bureaucracy, objective goal setting, results, outcome orientation, that can help. Okay. Also, the organizations, especially vis-a-vis the new tools and techniques that are available, remote working is possible, the matrix form of organization is a reality that has happened. Okay, flatter hierarchies, we can experiment with that based on the goals of a particular organization in the public sector. We can use the technology so that healthy mix of rigidity and flexibility can be obtained. Okay. So this is there. Also, the isolationist character of the bureaucracy, the inward orientation of the bureaucracy, this also needs to be broken. Right. Now, this brings me to something that I hinted at the close of the previous session, which was about often interchangeably for our discussions. We call bureaucracy and civil services interchangeably. Right. But are they the same? Are they the same? Well, for all practical purposes in our discussions, we use them interchangeably, but there is a difference that exists. So while in common discussion they are used simultaneously or synonymously, but they are not the same. Let me give you a brief orientation. So every government is an organization. It has certain functionaries which we call as employees. Right. So let me take you back to the colonial administration where there were employees and ICS, Indian police and other government jobs were there. Whom were they serving? Their colonial masters or the government? Their working was not oriented towards public interest. Whatever the interest of the then state as it existed, the colonial state, it was serving the state interest. So they were the government servant or the bureaucrats manning those bureaus. But the moment they start, let us say post-independence, welfarist era, working in civic interest, they become a civil servant. So that's one of the key orientational differences. Okay? Conceptually speaking, bureaucracy is a form of an organizational structure. It's a form of an organization that can be adopted by any private or public entity. Whereas civil service is the name given collective to the officers of the government. Why then there is a confusion? The confusion is, like any government, when an organization, because government is a gigantic entity, right? When an organization gets bigger, it has to do that departmentalization, division of work, and it has to create a structure which is essentially bureaucratic in shape. Okay? So they have to organize their personnel on the bureaucratic pattern, as theoretically this is the most efficient form of organization to perform any task. And therefore when you see the features of the bureaucracy, they are same. Civil service is also hierarchical, and therefore you see this civil service embodies that bureaucratic characteristics. Okay, so that is the key difference. But earlier system, the dichotomy, the bureaucracy was the part of the implementation. Even when it became the part of the policy function, it was the permanent executive. If any goof up happens, the people used to blame the state. But this was not the most desirable, situation which was there. Therefore, the modern day civil servants, when the politico-administration fusion is the prevailing norm, it is important that the civil services open up and do not actually remain within their sky castle. They should have their feet firmly on the ground, so that they realize, they involve themselves with the cause of the public interest and therefore serve that cause. And they are held accountable by the elected representatives, okay, for any misses or lapses. Okay, so this brings me to an offshoot of the bureaucracy as a concept that we study, to examine the idea of civil services in a tad bit more details. Right. You see, like I said, with time the functions are increasing. Apart from the traditional functions, the civil services is now being tasked to take up developmental function, welfareist function, right, to regulate the social economic activity, to creation of infrastructure, to contribute in development, look at agriculture, look at space, for example. Okay? All those things are there. And without adequate skilled manpower, those functions cannot be performed. Okay? Also, just merely the availability of that manpower is not sufficient. We will have to organize them as well, based on the requirements. Also, these personnel will have to be retained, paid adequately. We will have to account, the state will have to account for their personal development, will have to take care of their socio-psychological needs by providing them with some sort of a challenging work. And therefore, this whole complex is called as civil services. Basically, the non-combatant branches of the state which is there. So there is a difference of opinion. In some countries you have the judicial services, the part of the civil services. In some countries you have the judicial services which are not considered the part of the civil services. In India, for example, if you will see, there have been calls for national judicial service and things like that. Okay. Also, the definition differs according to the nature of the polity. For example, in Britain, the civil servants are the servants of the crown and not the judicial or the political office bearers who are employed in the civil capacity. Okay. So it includes defense forces, political offices, judicial offices, or persons working in the honorary capacity. Right. Apart from that, we can associate certain ideas with the civil services, that it's a professional body, it's a permanent, paid and skilled body. Okay. They perform various functions, whether administrative, technical or manipulative. Gladden actually notes that the requirements of the civil service is that it shall be impartially selected, administratively competent, politically neutral, and imbibed with the spirit of service to the community. Okay. Also, if we look at civil services, it's a body of, yes, professional specialists having some sort of a technical expertise, but that is varied because they serve different kinds of professions. For example, the police is also a civil service, IAS is also a civil service, IRS is also a civil service, IFS is also a civil service. Okay, so it is not a single profession. There are many divergent professions which are involved in the overall carrying out of the state's policy. They are professional administrators and not amateur politicians. Okay. Also, the organization, the principles like hierarchy, span of control, functional division of work, all these things are followed. There is a definite chain of command. Okay. Apart from that, there are certain values which are associated with civil services. Like I said, neutrality, anonymity. Why anonymity? You see, civil servants work as the instrument of political masters. And why I am actually emphasizing on this point? Because of lately we have seen many cases of the bureaucrats being flamboyant in an exercise of quasi-credit taking of stuff. That whether they are tough, they are intolerant to corruption, things like that. So that sort of a, cult is sought to be created, and that is something which is very visible on the internet. Right. There have been areas where civil servants have actually jostled to take the limelight. Okay. So the notion of anonymity actually flows from the fact that they are the tools in the hands of the polity, and they work under the ministerial responsibility, because that is the purpose of representative democracy. Okay. So they should maintain the complete anonymity. They should act in the name of the government. Okay. Also, the principle of neutrality is flowing from the same idea. Okay? Then if you look at the functions, civil services perform multiple functions, and please understand why am I going on this trajectory is for the fact that we are taking up personnel management and civil services together. Okay, I am taking India's case as just an example, so that you can use this knowledge in both the places. Okay, fairly clear. So we are talking on the conceptual ideas more. You see, civil servants perform multiple and varied functions. There will be routine functions and there would be non-routine functions. They aid and advise the political executive on policy matters. They implement the policies, and that is one of the most broadest function that they perform. Also, you see, civil servants perform quasi-legislative functions, making rules, regulations. Okay? Also, when I say the quasi-judicial functions, in that sense, we say that they can grant or refuse, let us say, certain licenses, permissions. They carry out arbitration of disputes between parties. And these functions are delegated to civil services by virtue of certain laws or by the acts of legislature. Why? Because these kind of issues, or the dimension in which these kind of issues are delegated by the legislature, they have a administrative connotation and administrative angle. The higher echelons especially, are working more closely with the political executive in aiding and advising them on public policy and other matters. Now, like I was saying, that the changing role, in this functionality you can add a role which has acquired increasingly permanent character within the functions that are to be performed by the civil services. That is the public relations, wherein they actually come out representing the government, explaining the policies of the government to the general public through public media, nowadays through new media, Twitter, etc., etc. So you would see secretaries, spokespersons, right? For example, you have weekly press briefings by Ministry of External Affairs, right? Or if something related to law and order has happened, there would be a PRO of the police department actually coming in to explain the scenario and the course of action, or a big case has been solved. Now, when you are looking at this entire gamut of civil service and its importance for the administration to run, for the administration to exist, for the administration to be palpable in terms of their role in governing a geography or nation. Ultimately, these civil servants are humans, and this is an organization, and organization is a part of a system. And therefore, the human resource development, so that the civil service remains an institution to reckon with, that is something which is vital. Why? Because you will need certain qualities in the individuals who are manning this civil service, and the efficiency of administration has a huge dependence on the human resource, their development, quality. Also, you will need to look at certain functions, whether that is leadership, organization, morale, finance, methods, procedures, and the human resources. And if you see, all of them have some relation to the human resources. Okay? So one of the tasks with regards to human resource development or personnel administration, we are using it interchangeably for the sake of convenience. Yes, there might be certain fine differences. And this personnel management or the personnel administration, we can see, is concerned with this. Human resource development. One of the foremost tasks is finding the capable people. Okay? Because it is the people through which organization work. It is the people through which material, money, machinery are used and utilized. So it is the people who are one of the most vital resources in the overall administration. Okay? And therefore, efficiency of human resource development is important. Also, this idea is actually metamorphosing in a very dynamic manner. Why? Because there are factors, especially globalization, automation, right? Other technological factors. And these advanced ideas need advanced people, just like you need this advanced course to actually run and to utilize their full potential. Okay? Also, apart from the usual ideas that the organizations are gaining in size, complexity and functions, there is more free flow of knowledge, information, ideas, and they have diverse aims, objectives and expectations. Right? So because of this, also the job descriptions themselves, the jobs themselves are changing in this rapidly changing environment. So there would be certain qualities that you will need. You will need these people to be more adaptable, more flexible, also to constantly upgrade themselves with new skills. So recall the time when maybe your parents or grandparents were working and there was a simple notion of work, not as complex, and then the transition happened to computers. It was difficult for them. Right? But now if you look at present day, cut to present day, the situation is now changing at a far massive pace and at a far diversified levels. So So there might be stuff that they will have to unlearn and relearn. And hence skill development and staying updated is one part of this human resource development. Okay. Also, if you will see the informal and the formal parts of the organization, they have also gone more, sophisticated, because of the fact more information, more knowledge flowing into the system. A small example of this would be, and I always take this, that is the police force. Now you see police force 30-40 years ago. The constable and the large mass of the constabulary used to be only high school pass. They did not used to be graduates or postgraduates. But now see, today, right? So I went to a place with a few friends. Some of them were bureaucrats. So there was this PSO. You understand? Personal security officer of somebody. And somehow he greeted me and we started a conversation. And he told me that he is a PhD. So obviously the expectations of a person who's a PhD is, they can't be equated with a person with a limited worldview, limited exposure of a 10th pass or a 12th pass. Right? Now, a lot of you must be thinking, a PhD and a constable. Trust me that if most of you will not work hard, you will end up giving all those examinations. Or somehow the luck does not favor you, you will end up giving all those SSC, CPOs exam as well. Okay, so that happens. That is going to happen with most of the people, because only 1,000, 1,200 odd people are going to get selected. That makes 6,000 people in 6 years. Okay, rest of the youth of India will have to look for other jobs, including you, if you do not study well. So the point is this, that the situation, the job situation has gone far more complex. The trade unions have grown in number, sophistication, the worker interests have diversified. So a 10th pass or a 12th pass had a limited exposure. He would, probably hear some uncharitable words which might be unfounded, by his superior, senior or the officer he or she is working under. But do you think this person is going to listen? Or why should he listen? So the expectations are changing. And hence the focus of the human resource development is the development of the individuals working in the organization. And when we talk about this development, it's a holistic development of their skills, attitude, dispositions, orientation, knowledge, apart from, yes, financial development, apart from all the levels. So if I equate it with Maslow, the HRD should look at all the aspects. The way it will look at all the aspects will define the model with which it is following. If it is following this kind of approach, which Maslow suggests, it's a one approach, then there would be other approaches. Okay. So this particular idea of human resource development is now the dominant identity of the human resource development. It is borrowed largely from the corporate philosophy and policy that we see today. Also, while the individuals which are part of an organization, the employees, are not only important for the future prospects of the organizations, but also their future prospects as well. because they are not actually being assumed as passive entities, unlike the scientific management of just following orders. They are the active agent. They are being seen as responsible partners in the organization. Okay? So the earlier orientation was that the human resource development should enable the employee to realize their potential. Now the new orientation is that the organization should strive to develop the individual and not just realize the potential. Okay? So from one of the maximizing profit and monetary compensation to employees for the work that they are doing, to a far more conducive aspect of human resource development. Okay? Any doubts whatsoever? Any doubts still here? Okay? Okay, no doubts. Fine. Now, this human resource development can actually then help the organization retain the best employees. How? Through proper human resource planning. Through proper human resource planning, ensuring that the competent and dedicated employees are retained for future. To retain, it will have to give them more responsibility, work across all the needs. Okay? It will have to develop the skills, the knowledge, motivate them to cooperate and work for the organizational interest. Okay? So it will provide opportunities for both personal as well as professional development, rational allocation of work, okay, ensuring teamwork, cooperation, creating a healthy working environment, and these are the description of what does a good human resource development entail. Okay, so create that proper professional development for employees, create work environment, a satisfied socially and psychologically employee will contribute to the organizational goals. Work on their skills, aptitude, refresh their attitudes, etc. And therefore, there are key aspects of this organizational or the human resource development. One of them is recruitment. So while discussing the questions, we saw how recruitment is something which has been asked, training is something which has been asked a lot, right? And similar is the case with performance appraisal. So I will be giving scholarly perspectives on each of them, right? Because rest of it is something that you already know. Still, if there are any doubts, you are welcome to ask. Okay, so recruitment. You see, it is one of the most important processes, and it has a direct bearing on the goal attainment, the quality of public services that will be rendered by the organization. Okay? Because without the right recruitment, other things will be impossible. You see, just to give an example, you would have seen that sometimes in our schools, what the teacher used to do was make the most notorious guy the class monitor or the class representatives. Then either two extreme things used to happen. Either the notoriety within the class used to get wiped out because suddenly that person realized, oh my God, I am important. Or the whole class becomes notorious. Okay. So the idea is that, a sound recruitment is very important. So the search for the right personnel to perform various activities. Right? Through which suitable candidates are inducted in the public setup. In especially a democratic developing society, while this process is important from the idea that the society is in such a phase that it needs quality people, but it should be well represented as well. The cross section of the society should be there. Okay, and therefore you see, even in countries like India, we have had substantial reservations for various sections so that they do not become a victim of the elite capture. Also, if you look at recruitment, it has both positive as well as a negative meaning. While the idea is to find more suitable, talented, competent personnel. Okay? So that is the positive aspect. It also involves the elimination of not properly qualified or competitive people. That is the negative aspect. And through that negative orientation, it is actually trying to keep the negative elements, whether that is politicized nature, biased nature, right, fractured morality or whatnot, at bay, to keep those things away. Okay? So, with the passage of time, as the government functions have gone far more complex, diversified, numerous and sophisticated, more technical in nature, right, with the themes like public services, democratic sentiment gaining far more currency, the recruitment has become all the more important. Okay? So this recruitment is one of the key areas. There are various systems. US, there is a system. In India, there is a system. So there is a merit system, spoil system. Generally, there are examinations, which are taken, especially when you are recruiting the permanent executive, just like in our case. As well as there is a system where there is a cadet system. Okay, so you induct them as raw talent and then group them in a specialized field. For example, which was prevalent in Soviet Russia. Okay, then there is a system which is based on the general mental ability, like ours, or expertise, or lateral entry. There are direct recruitment, indirect recruitment, okay, mass recruitment, positive recruitment, negative recruitment, all those things are there. Okay. So you will have to lay down the qualifications, look into various forms, examination, etc., etc. In this, what you are choosing is something which is important. So Robson, there is a phrase by Robson, not the phrase, but some lines of Robson that I would like to quote. Clerical assistants are chosen by means of short tests consisting of simple right-wrong questions on arithmetic, spelling, meaning of words, etc. Such tests have serious disadvantage. They offer no scope for positive ability, such as clear expression. On the contrary, the essay type examination is intended to assess the intellectual qualities and depth of understanding of candidates. Okay, so now I hope you know why the SSC exam and why the UPSC exams are different, because they want a different set of people and therefore they are checking different abilities. Okay. So with this, like we were speaking about the debates that are at heart, I want to shed light on the generalist versus specialist debate a bit. Just like we were talking about lateral entry in the previous class. Generalist versus specialist debate. So a generalist would entail an amateur administrator. An amateur administrator who has a basic education, right? And will have certain personal qualities, character. And that generalist is appointed largely at a middle level supervisory post, with which you can associate no specific technical, educational or professional subject. That is why you see generally when you clear the exam, you are in that amateur administrator role. You are straight away not appointed the CEO. You are straight away not even appointed the district collector. You are appointed an SDM, so that you learn the ropes of the game. Okay. While some initial academic training is given, actual learning happens on the field. And in time that person graduates to higher levels in the administrative positions. While a specialist, on the other hand, is a specialist of a specific subject branch and has acquired a specialized technical experience. So he is not appointed in positions where such knowledge is not needed. That is why you see we need a balance. By definition it is like that we need a balance of generalist and specialist. Only generalist is not good enough. Similarly, only specialist is not good enough. Especially in administrative services, wherein the administrator has to deal with a variety of tasks, different tasks. So if you see administration in India, Britain, it is largely dominated by the generalist. Okay? And the specialists actually work within their specialized area or departments. That is why you have certain specialist services being created. Okay. So the administrative services remains that journalist service, whereas as an IRS, IRTS, etc., as you graduate to higher levels, you acquire far more specialized knowledge. Mosher actually favors the generalist. He saw, and he was actually looking at the US administration, and he said that the swapping of generalist with specialist is a dangerous trend. Because these specialists were so obsessed with their specializations that they were a threat to the ideals of public services. Equality. Because if somebody is an engineer, he will think that only an engineer is a better person for a particular job. That job might not require engineering expertise, but he will think that way. So it will compromise on equality. The merit principle, the equality principle and the merit will get compromised. The broadness of vision of a journalist, the broadness of outlook, it was necessary, and more so in the developing world, because of the complexity of the administrative problem. So a person with diversified, liberal education, multifunctional approach is better than a specialist. Okay? Because they come in direct contact with the grassroots of the administration. Also, the various departments are there. So you need a person having a basic know-how of all of it, a generalist, to establish better coordination. They have a broader view of problems and not something which I call a tunnel vision syndrome. So they do not suffer from that tunnel vision syndrome, and therefore are better placed to tackle the problems which are there in the society than the specialist. Also, the ministers are generalists and they need a generalist advice. Okay. Also, at the higher levels, it is more about decision making than the technical knowledge. Right? So that is there. Also, there are arguments in favor of the specialist. Okay? They are better planners, managers and operators, all clubbed into one. So compare it with FAOL, multiple bosses kind of a relationship. That creates problems. So if in one person, because of being a specialist, Taylorian approach, it is better, it is argued. Okay? Also, the increasing nature of the complex tasks demand that sort of a specialized treatment, and that is the majority of the argument that increasingly the job of administrators are getting technical, specialized in nature. Generalists will always depend on the advice of specialists. So why not specialist actually handle? Right. So these are the differences between generalist and specialist. Understood? Just flip through the pages and let me know if you have understood. Should we continue? Should we continue? Okay. Now, let us come to training. So training, you see, it's a conscious effort. Conscious effort to improve, to increase an employee's skill, power, intelligence, to develop the attitudes, values, where? In a desired direction. So training as an activity itself has certain goals. It cannot be a goal-free idea. Okay? Also, we must distinguish training from education. These are two different things. Training, the scope is far more narrower, far more specific than the education, which is about a complete holistic development of an individual right from the childhood. So often you would have heard me saying that our job is preparing or training for civil services. At times I say that we are not here to do PhDs in public administration, because this is not an educational institution. This is a institution which trains you to write the exam better and qualify. Okay, so training is that. It has a very surgical purpose. But still, training and education are closely related. Because training will modify the person's attitude, values, and to that extent, it overlaps with education. So there is a working distinction between the two. When we look at an activity or a profession like public administration, the purpose of training is very surgical. It is specific and vocational, related to the job. To increase a person's skill, ability to perform that job better. Okay? But if we will be looking at it from the classical lens, it will largely entail efficiency and effectiveness. But cut to present, if we are looking at it from a broader perspective, it is not just about efficiency and effectiveness. Yes, those are there, very much there. But it is also about broadening the vision to enhance the competence in public service by imparting professional knowledge, patterns of behavior, habits, attitude. Now, what's the process? Okay, you will identify the needs of training, and based on those needs, you will make a plan for training, or I can say a training policy. A training policy. Okay? Then according to it, you will set the goals, objectives, and there can be two aspects on it. There can be specific training and there can be general training. For example, all of you will have a foundation course. Once you clear the exam, that's the general training. Then there would be specific, domain specific training. The police people will go to the National Police Academy, the Foreign Service will go to Foreign Service Institute, etc., etc. So the training requirements might differ from department to department. Okay? So that is there. Right? Also, an objective of the training is to help you enable on the thinking lines. It is not the idea to make you a mechanized, individual. In modern day times, we can say that the training should help become the civil servant more people oriented. That they are the public servants, not masters. It is not just about the mechanical efficiency. It is also about the adherence to duties, capacity building, higher work, responsibilities. Okay? Also, it should act as an agent or should work with regard to things like morale, so as to offset the daily dull routine practices, because there are routine functions which are performed by the administration. Also, you see, people in administration, the functionaries, come from various social, linguistic, economic, class, caste backgrounds. So training also acts as an exercise of providing a reasonable amount of homogeneity in outlook and vision. So training, like I said, is the cornerstone of a sound personnel management practice, because it helps the organization take the best out of those civil servants. Okay? Also, it not only helps in the organizational development, organizational efficiency, it also helps the individual who's there as part of the organization to enhance his or her levels of individual development, to increase, for example, if it's a business organization, to increase the market share. Okay? Training also helps actually foster the initiative, creativity in the personnel who are trained, which might actually get sobered out due to temperament, age, routine characteristics, etc., and helps them achieve higher standards of quality. Okay? Now there are various methods. For example, on-the-job training is there. Okay? Lecture method, classroom method, group discussions, this method, that method, case study, T group technique, role playing, etc. Okay? Then there can be phases in which training can be done. I do not want to get into the mechanical exercise. You have the various committees, the HOTA committee, this committee, that committee, who have talked about training, that the service should be trained after 12 years, mid-career level training, advanced training at the time of 20 years of service, then at the 28 years of service. Okay, short-term training, long-term training, pre-entry training, post-entry training. Okay, so I do not want to get into it. Just have a look at it and let me know. The PYQs, like I said, will give you the clue, because the training idea is being linked with many ideas through the PYQs. Let me repeat those with regards to training, right? And it would be great if you can, write it, because it is qualitative aspects of those PYQs. So it will be great if you can write them down. Okay, and send it across to me through relevant channels, which have been told in the first session itself. Training is considered as a paid holiday. Okay. The next was, currently administrative training focuses more on improving efficiency than on transforming the attitudes and behavior of civil servants. What type of training will you suggest to fill this gap? I talked about that it is not just about efficiency and effectiveness, that is a classical orientation. The training certainly is a broader idea. So those ideas will be used here, elaborate. This was a 2018 PYQ. Okay. Then again 2022, performance problems are rarely caused by simply the lack of training, and rarely can performance be improved by training alone. Critically analyze that training alone is not sufficient. Last but not the least, training is not a short affair. Rather, it is a step-by-step process of developing skills, habit, knowledge and aptitude. Something that I have talked about today itself. Okay. So these were the paper 1 questions that I would like you to write. Okay. Next is career advancement. Okay, please don't write career, it's not a cycle. Okay, so career advancement. You see, what is a career? We'll talk about the advancement later. You know? So, a career is a progress of individual in any field of work, generally through the lifetime. So that is what the time and space that we are actually looking at. Okay. So when we look at an organization and a career system, we are looking at that the persons are selected and they work and graduate to various levels in an organization. And this whole professional life of an employee under the system, if it is utilized profitably from one level to another, we are looking at a career. Okay, if it's a contractual job, the person is going to actually see a series of those contractual jobs across various organizations as a career. But you see, the way the organization is and the way the organization functions, the list of functioning that is there for the organizations or the functions it is into, the career system has closely been identified with that. Okay, wherein in a stream of thought you grow from strength to strength, from one position to another by contributing to the goals of the organization. Similar is the case with civil services. If you do not compensate the civil servants, if there is no career development for those civil servants, the charm would go. You will have to provide those reasonable career prospects. So if a person is willing to give 6 attempts, study so hard, get into the services, he hopes to become a chief secretary or a cabinet secretary one day, or a DGP one day. Right? And hence the career system itself serves as a guarantee for the effort on part of the individual to contribute to the organizational goals, thereby to contribute to organizational efficiency, effectiveness, integrity. And therefore, it also works as a shield against patronage or political pressures. It gives a sense of security. And therefore, career advancement is nothing but a function of career planning and career development that relate to the progression of an individual in an organization. So the focus of this advancement is individual. And the gains to the organizations are considered as incidental. Okay? I hope you have understood this. Understood that the focus is individual and the gain to organizations is incidental. So this is the part of the larger idea of the career management, so that the organization can address its manpower requirement by providing the opportunities for advancement to its functionaries. Okay? So that the engaged human resource can be engaged in a better manner. The individual's development is for the gain of the organization. So it's a far more direct alignment. Okay? So that is something to note about the career advancement, career development, etc. Now there are various methods: open system and closed career system. So in a closed career system, the entry is comparatively at a young age and promotion is the mode of filling in the higher positions. Whereas in an open career system, it is far more permeable. Okay? That is there. Alright. Next, we shall move to the idea of I hope you are you are aware of rank, position, etc. Right? What is a rank? Next is discipline. Discipline. Again, many questions have been asked on discipline. You see, anywhere, even if you look at nature, the discipline is important. What if sun doesn't behave the way it behaves or the way it should behave? What if the water does not behave the way it should behave? So discipline is a very important aspect of individual as well as the social reality. Also, every organization, apart from members, purpose, etc., has a certain rules and regulations to enforce that discipline, so that the conduct of the employees can be directed towards goals. If we are looking at it from the ethical lens, the conduct of the employees are ethical. So the idea is that whenever there is a discipline, there is a set of norms. So if things are moving within and in and around those norms, it's fine. The moment there is a digression, there is a compromise of discipline, and hence it should be checked and acted upon. Hence it should be checked and acted upon. Okay? Now, where this organization is, what it is doing, right, the composition, the concerns, the goals will determine the finer details of what constraint, what entails the discipline and what entails the violation of discipline. If you look at the modern day civil service, especially in India, you have clear-cut rules. You have All India Service rules, right? You have All India Service Conduct rules. You have, rules of procedure, code, etc., which actually determine the expected behavior in line with the organizational goals that is to be directed in an functionary. Okay? So we have to actually establish those goals. So LD White, our very own White, actually list out certain causes which should actually result in disciplinary action against public servants. For example, inattention, not giving attention to the duty, carelessness, breakage, wastage of resources, etc. Inefficiency, insubordination, violation of rules and laws, disloyalty, immorality, intoxication, lack of integrity, bribery, corruption, including the violation of the recognized code of ethics, failure to pay debts, failure to show proper deference to official supervisors. That is why you will see every civil servant would say Mananiya Sansad, Mananiya Parshad. So there is a deference that should be shown. Like I said, there are concerned rules and procedures which regulate this, and then the violation of them actually leads to disciplinary action. Next is the performance appraisal. Again, an idea which has been asked, right? I want you to remember basics of it, for the fact that basics help you align the current affairs and the contemporary developments better. Okay. Also, my idea is to orient you with these things so that they get refreshed, but in the questions you will have certain specific aspects. For example, peer reviews, 360-degree appraisal, or ACR system, annual confidential report, etc. So you should be mindful of them as well in terms of how you go about them. Okay, so those are the factual details. You see, performance appraisal is important because that contributes to a multitude of things. First, whether the man who was selected on the basis of the right job is doing that job. It also acts as a basis of career advancement. It also helps us identify the needs and the capability gaps for which training can be given. It also helps identify who to retrench. Okay. So, every organization will have a system of performance analysis for their employees, so that you can assess their capabilities, and their adequate contribution can be determined, or the potential contribution can be determined, and it is also related to the compensation or the monetary award or the non-monetary benefits. Okay. So in short term, whether the employee is useful for the organization or not. In a long term, the potential of promotion, like I said, career advancement, etc., all those things depend. But what do you judge on? So the setting up of performance criteria is important. It is something which is fairly easy in private organizations because of the scope is limited of the set of operations. But in a government organization, it gets far more difficult. It is not a sales target that how many pens have you sold. So there are so many intangible aspects which are involved in the public. And therefore, the laying of performance standards is a key idea in public services to actually ensure that the public personnel perform as per the demands and pulls and pressures of the society. Also, the methods of the performance appraisal, from where will you get the data? How will you carry out this systematic assessment? Okay, so there are multiple methods: ranking method, comparison method, grading is there, scaling is there, ACR is one method, etc. Okay. Then similar is the case of promotion, pays, that is the monetary compensation. So how do you structure a pay, whether that is a CTC, right, service conditions, what are the direct benefits, indirect benefits that you are providing. Okay, so you will have to actually work across the value chain, from Maslow. That can act as a great reference. Okay, and then the retirement and things like that. Also, a crucial aspect of personnel administration is the employer-employee relations. And you see, this is something that has been at the center of the organizational analysis, not from today but from a long back. The methods might have gone more sophisticated, the orientations might have acquired or incorporated newer perspectives. But when Taylor was looking at systemic efficiency and he was looking from bottom, when Fayol was looking, he was actually looking at how the employees can be managed better to bring out productivity, the organizations can be managed better. Your theories of leadership, situational theories, theories of motivation are largely focusing on the employer relations, so that they end up contributing best to the organizational goals. So the central idea is what? Performance and reward. You perform, you get rewarded. That's the basic relationship, basic of the relationship between the employer and the employee. And in this sense, the leadership it is upon leadership to influence the employee behavior and orient it in a manner that it aligns with the goals of the organization. And that is the job of the management, the leadership. The goal alignment between individual and the organizational goals. So you will have to look for the basic needs approach, the need-based Maslow's need hierarchy theory. Okay, psychological needs, food, shelter, clothing, security needs, belongingness, affection, esteem needs, and then self-actualization. Right? So that is something that you will have to link it with the theories of Maslow, etc. Okay. Then the code of conduct and code of ethics. That is something with regards to code of conduct and code of ethics we already read in Ethics, Integrity and Aptitude, GS paper 4. But increasingly we have seen that many questions are getting asked from the code of conduct and code of ethics. You see that the government, for any administration, will lay down certain codes for the employees. The violation of those codes will attract disciplinary action. Now, what does that code of conduct actually should have? It will be the path or the direction to certain dispositions. For example, let us say devotion to duty, integrity, what can be considered as an act of integrity and what can not be considered as an act of integrity. For civil services, it will be refer to ethics, foundational values for civil services, right? And dress it up with PubAd and you will have it. Neutrality, anonymity. Neutrality, anonymity, Okay, I'm not getting into deep into the concept what is neutrality, what is anonymity. You can find the reference in Weber also, the impersonal order, etc. Now obviously there are issues. The issues are the politicized nature of the bureaucracy, the culture of secrecy that is there. Secrecy is both desirable as well as undesirable. So you will have to reflect on these issues. Also, along with the code of conduct, the idea of code of ethics, or broadly if I take up, administrative ethics. That is also needed. Ethics would entail far more internal idea. The code of ethics would entail nothing but professional code of morality for the civil service. So what will be the traditions, precedents, standards that have to be maintained? So Chester Bernard in this case says that the ethical conduct is governed by beliefs or feelings of what is right. The ethical conduct is governed by, this is Chester Bernard, beliefs or feelings of what is right or wrong, regardless of self-interest or immediate consequences of a decision to do or not to do specific things under particular condition. Paul Appleby, right, our very own Paul Appleby, came to India as well. Again, Appleby said that the morality part of the administration cannot be mechanistic. It cannot be a machine. There will be a soul part in it. There will be morality. Administration and morality cannot be separated. What he says is significant, is that morality in administration alone could ensure a better government. An administration without morality will necessarily lead to a bad government. And the morality in the administration can only be sustained if values such as honesty, loyalty, courtesy, patience is there. So he says that a good administrator is a moral administrator, or administrator with morals. He has a sense of responsibility. He has the ability to not only utilize the institutional resources but also to cultivate them. He has good communication and man management skills, or personnel management skills, or administration skills. He is a team worker, a problem solver. He has personal confidence, openness towards the interest of the public, its needs, and is sensitive to public. So whenever I say non-partisan attitude, anonymity, secrecy, public good, neutrality, fairness, sincerity, all these are the components of the administrative ethics. In India, if you see, all these components are there in the All India Service Rules, Central Services Conduct Rules, Railway Services Conduct Rules, etc. Right? So with this, we close the unit of personnel, administration and civil services. Right? There are static parts to it, which through PYQs I expect you to revise. And if you find any issues, you can discuss it in the mentorship. Right? We'll be starting with financial administration and management from the next session. Right? That's all. Thank you.